morning, and thank you to all of our esteemed panelists. I'm Lawrence Montalvo, co-founder of Black Independence Project, and I'm honored to host a special group of leaders today who will be discussing themes around community organizing, especially in a pivotal moment in building momentum for increasing racial equity for all Black lives. So just to introduce everyone, you have on the panel, Dr. Raul Fernandez. He is the Associate Dean for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at the Boston University Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. He's also a select board member for Brookline, Massachusetts. You also have here Jordan Stockdale, the Executive Director of the Young Men's Initiative, which is part of the New York City Mayor's Office. And then lastly, you have Unique C. Starks, who is the founder of the Starks Foundation. She has a master's in social work from NYU and is currently a candidate for her doctorate in social work at USC. So I just wanted to kick off this panel by first getting a better understanding of the social impact work that you all are engaging in, and then we can dive into a few relevant topics and leave questions for Q&A. So for those who are tuning in, I'll be moderating the questions and any comments, and we'll definitely, as the panelists are having the conversation, I'll sprinkle in some of those questions. But for our panelists, just wanted to start with what impact work you're currently engaged in. And we could start with Jordan, and then Raul, and then Unique.
Okay, cool. Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so I run the Young Men's Initiative, which is part of the New York City Mayor's Office. It's an office dedicated to uplifting Black and brown young people. We fund and co-manage about 20 initiatives across criminal justice, reimagining criminal justice reform, employment or workforce development, and then education, which also includes our mentoring programs. One of our most popular programs is New York City Men Teach, which is a program designed to get more men of color in the classroom. And there's a lot of really good data around the benefits of that, particularly for young Black men or young Black boys. This summer, we launched 4 programs specifically designed to pay students to do online learning. And so about 4,000 kids are benefiting from that this summer. So that's a little bit about the YMI does. I also am the co-founder of Hire Harlem, and we are an organization that promotes businesses that hire locally, give back to the community through reinvestment, or are owned by people of color.
Hey y'all, Raul Fernandez, as Lawrence mentioned, Associate Dean and faculty member at Boston University, and also an elected official in the community where I live, Brookline. In Brookline, a lot of stuff that I'm working on right now is around police reimagining. So I'm leading up a task force to reimagine public safety in our community. But also we've got a lot of issues related to housing and access in our community, to food insecurity as well, and to just making sure that it's the kind of community where everybody feels safe and welcome and can thrive. In addition, we've got this safety net. We're in the middle, of course, of this pandemic still, and we've got this safety net that's working to help folks out. They're not getting enough support from the federal level or even the state level, and so we're trying to rally our own supports to be able to help people with rental assistance and food and paying the bills and all those kinds of things. So it's kind of all hands on deck right now. So that's a little taste of it. Obviously, a lot of the work that I do also is in education, and I can talk about that too.
Thank you for that. So hi everyone, my name is Unique. The social justice work that I'm engaged at the Starks Foundation and the Center for Court Innovations, and the other organizations that I'm affiliated with, is working with youth and adolescents, predominantly Black youth and adolescents in urban communities who have been impacted and exposed to violence on any level, physical, financial, physiological, and have been impacted by the justice system. That being incarcerated, their family members incarcerated, their family members incarcerated, community members incarcerated, really working with youth who are at risk to violence due to their proximity and their environment.
Awesome. Thank you guys for all kind of discussing the work that you're doing in your communities, and definitely want to dive into a few of those topics as we get into the session. So one question that I definitely want to kind of discuss before we kind of dive in a bit more is to get into the definition of equity and inclusion, particularly in local neighborhoods. And Raul, I want to kind of give this question to you as a leader in the space and kind of designer of your own signature workshop, Blind Spots. I'm curious to know how implicit biases differ across institutions and corporations, and what are some of the ways or the core learnings of overcoming these blind spots?
Good question. It's important to understand the connection between, we talk about blind spots, sort of about the sort of the identities and experiences that are so different than ours that we can't understand how things that are simple or easy for us or that work for us don't work for other people. I think policing is a perfect example of that. We've got a lot of folks in our community that say, like, I think our police are great. They're doing a terrific job, to which I say, I believe that's been your experience. But there are other people who are having dramatically different experiences with police. And, one of the things, the connection between sort of our own individual biases and policy is really important to understand, is that, like, in policy making, if you can draft a policy that works for like 80 to 90% of the people, you pat yourself on the back, like, that's pretty good. Like, I've crafted a good policy that works for almost everybody. But when consistently the 10 to 20% of the people for whom that policy doesn't work are Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQ, they're women, they're immigrants, they're low-income folks, like, when those folks consistently end up on the side where the policy doesn't work for them, that's where you have to really look at who the policymakers are. Because mostly folks are solving problems that they can see and that they understand. And in many ways ignoring those that they don't believe exist or can't see or don't understand. So it's important for us to engage with people, and for us folks in power aren't always going to understand the problems that the rest of us have, which is why we need to take power and start to become, sit at the table and help make those decisions. So it's a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you for providing that. And one thing I wanted to touch on when while you were talking was mentioning the police and how there are policies that definitely benefit white counterparts or white passing counterparts, but disproportionately affect Black, Indigenous, Brown citizens. And on the topic of police, and there's this, since the recent racial uprisings, there's been the topic of defunding and abolishing the police, and there's been confusion on what that means. There's people who think that we need the police, but there isn't necessarily an awareness of what can substitute the police in place. So just wanted to get into the implications on minimizing the negative outcomes of communities of color. And Jordan, I wanted to kind of take it to you and see if you could kind of walk our viewers through what abolishing the police really means, and the significance around that.
Yeah, so I would say that I'm not the best person to do that. So I think, but I'm happy to talk about my personal thoughts on that. And yeah, I guess I must have got a totally different set of questions. But police abolitionists, the abolition movement has been something that's been around for many, many years. It's gained salience as of late, both in the context of the carceral system, but also in policing. And it's this idea of reimagining society where we don't need to place people behind bars or we don't need to have the state enforcing policies through punition. And I think it is a beautiful philosophy. Where I come in is I work, in city government, where that is not where I believe society currently lies, right? There's nothing in our history, in American history, that suggests that America's largest city would just not have a police force in this given moment, or would not have a jail for that matter. And even though I think we need to strive and fight as hard as we can for that kind of society, I do believe that in a democracy, that will come with a variety of changes over time. Now, I think you need to have people across the whole spectrum, people demanding that now on the streets, fighting for that now. And I think you need to have people that are willing to say, this is the policy that can pass, let's champion that policy, and let's make the real concerted changes that we need right now. And so I think I'm more in the inside, working on policies that I think can drastically reduce the number of Black and brown people who are arrested, who are sent to jail, and for that matter, to have better conditions for the fewer people that are sent there, which is something that is a difficult thing to work on, because all jails are inherently evil and terrible places, but there are better and worse jails, right? And so having someone on the inside thinking about what does a better system look like for the people that are there, given the reality that there will be people there for a period of time, I think is important. And so my last job, I was our deputy director for closed Rikers, and that was a lot of my work. It was on working to pass a policy that would drastically shrink the criminal justice system, reduce the bed capacity in New York City by 75%, so that fewer people could be locked up, right? And then also on raise the age, which was a policy that passed a couple years ago that raised the age of criminality. New York was one of 2 states in the entire country that automatically charged every 16-year-old that allegedly committed a crime as an adult. All 16-year-olds were charged as adults. And so we changed that policy. Advocates were on the ground. They fought for that hard, passed that policy to the state. And so now, 16 and 17-year-olds are no longer automatically charged as adults. So, yeah. I mean, that seems like such a basic thing, right? But it took a coalition.
Yeah, no, that I think definitely the work that you did in Rikers definitely is just an example of policies that definitely try to negate anything that the police is currently, what the police is doing in terms of incriminating Black and brown folks for no reason. So definitely think that is something that is great, and I definitely want to hear more about what you're doing for the Young Men's Initiative, and just some of the outcomes that have kind of manifested from the different programs so far, just so that our viewers can get a sense of we have these programs in place, but what are some of the outcomes that are deriving from that?
Yeah. So you want me to get into outcomes right now? Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So I mentioned New York City Men Teach earlier. So Men Teach is, again, a program that is designed to increase the number of men of color in the classroom. And so we've done that. There's, over 1,000 more men of color in the classroom as a result of that program. We are ideally pushing that to 2,000 soon. And then that matters, right? So John Hopkins did a study back in 2017 that showed that Blacks, one of those years, were 19% more likely to graduate from high school, which is a pretty amazing data point. But it just shows if we see ourselves in successful positions, if we have someone that has a cultural relation to us in school, then we will be more successful. And so that's the premise of that initiative. We have an initiative called Jobs Plus, that's with a ton of different partner organizations that help people find employment. We're more of a funder than actual managing it. Again, we launched 4 different summer programs this year, and they all paid students to do online learning. One of those programs was called Knockout COVID. We paid youth from 14 to 24 years old to design a media campaign around the importance of social distancing. And those videos are amazing. I can't wait to put those out, but they're really good. The youth are super creative. The young people were super creative. We paid young people through a program called the Anti-Violence Gun Program, which mostly kids that were living in NYCHA developments, between $850 and $1,000 this summer to do online learning and online learning experiences. And so that's, that's some of the stuff that we're putting out there. I think one of our main philosophies that we should get money out into the community. So we had an initiative called the Community Crisis Response Initiative, which is a response to the COVID crisis. And we issued $10,000 grants to 22 different community-based organizations that either had youth programming or were responding to the crisis in their communities. And so it was a kind of a grant that allowed smaller CBOs to continue to exist during this tough time when funding is not flowing as it usually does, but also augmenting the services they provide for our community. So it's community serving community. And that's something that we try to do, is to try to expand community capacity to solve community problems. Because ultimately that's the solution to our problems can't just be the government coming in and fixing it based on their perch, but actually seeing people on the ground that are doing that work and ensuring that they have the resources needed to fulfill their vision.
Thanks, Jordan. I think that last point about the community crisis response initiative is definitely, we'll get into that later, but definitely think that that's something that a lot of folks want to understand, is how can they kind of build their own movements or grassroots organizations and really get support or funding behind these. But I want to take it to Unique. Unique, and we've chatted offline, and I wanted to get into some of the work that you've done consulting for the Center for Core Innovation, but then also for the Starks Foundation. So definitely would love to hear the work that you're doing in there, and then how the work that you are working on is kind of contributing to the programs that actually will be that should be replacements for policing against all different types of crimes.
Okay, so I want to start with the area that I predominantly work in is Brownsville, Brooklyn. Brownsville, Brooklyn has the most one concentrated area has the most public housing. So there's over 11 developments in Brownsville, Brooklyn alone of public housing. So when we look in that area in particular, there's only about 5 banks. There's less than 10 supermarkets. The food is questionable, often expired. The education system is questionable. There's paddy wagons of police outside buildings, outside corner stores without reason. There's police cars circulating around. So when you think about this community on a large scale, right, I ask everyone, like, what could paddy wagons of police do to serve poverty, lack of access, lack of resources? And that's where we come in, right? Like, so we provide stipends and internships. We provide case management. We provide educational skills. We provide readiness, job readiness skills. We provide high school support and advocacy, right? So if your parents have an educational level of maybe 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, I haven't completed high school, right? The expectations that they'll be able to advocate for you in high school and help you go through the motions isn't realistic, right? But who shows up for these youth, right? It's supposed to be the systems, but it goes back to community taking, community supporting community. And that's where we come in, really on the ground, supporting youth. So when we think about communities like Brownsville, over policing and defunding policing, we don't need 10 paddy wagons on one block. One paddy wagon may be enough, and I argue, but that's even too much. Let's put that money back into schools. Let's put that money back into housing. Let's put that money back into removing mold so children aren't intaking mold, right? Let's put that into asbestos being moved out of houses so that people aren't, so that youth aren't living with this trauma, and they're grown into adults with having mold and like in their systems, and there's not even doctors readily available to take care of them in community. And again, access is a problem, so we can't say transportation, this is New York City, because it just doesn't exist here, right? So my work is largely around, hopefully, we like to call ourselves a demonstration site, both at the Starks Fund and at the Center for Court Innovations, where we go into these communities and we provide support and we build equity, we build resources, we build financial readiness and financial gain for people, particularly in the building. We also work with building entrepreneurship, as we do know that jobs aren't available. And there are so many great ideas and innovations in these communities. It's just not money and resources available. So we look at, what does the community need? We go, we do research, we do surveying, we're on the ground. Like, what do you all feel you need, and how can we get you that? We have people on the ground that actually goes into nature, and we ask them, so what do you all need here? We place make. That's something that started in California, where we build out buildings. We have programs where our youth will go in, we'll paint the buildings, we'll paint the playgrounds, we'll paint the basketball courts, we'll have free events for the community. So it's really reminding everyone in the community that you have a purpose, and your purpose matters, and you deserve equity. And how can we give you that? Not what we think, because historically that's how this work has been done. We tell them what they need, and then that's what we give them. But we're in the community and we're on the ground. What do you need, and how can we support you in getting that? And that's the work that I largely do as a senior social worker and as a founder of the Starks Foundation.
Awesome, thank you, Unique, for sharing that. And I want to ask a question that we didn't necessarily, I didn't necessarily put in the questions in advance, but just from hearing you speak about concentrating in Brownsville and providing these programs, for those who don't necessarily have an understanding of these programs, do they come from the civic level? Can they come from sort of the nonprofit level? Can people in their own communities build organizations that provide these services, or do they have to stem from more of a policy landscape? And that's a question for you, Unique, but anyone else can jump in and answer that as well.
Okay, so I believe this question is twofold, right? I feel like everyone can name a problem in their community, or name a problem that they've seen in a community, right? And if you probably in the day of social media, if you write your friends on social, and this is for a person that's not immersed in this work and probably want to get organized. When I see an issue, sometimes I write my colleagues, hey, so the surplus of gun violence, the numbers of gun violence are increasing, right? Like, we have 1 to 2 youth being shot weekly. What can we do? Let's hold a rally. Let's reach out to stakeholders in the community, such as the Young Men's Initiative. They have funds, right? Let's reach out to all these communities. Like, hey, we have this initiative we want to do. Can you guys support us? Can you all support us? And that's sometimes where an idea starts outside of the scope of the work that I do. I have an idea and I really want to receive support around it. So that's how a rally started, right? Another thing is policy. Like, as I want to say, as Jordan named, policy is very, very important, such as being as well as being on the ground. So there's micro work, there's macro work, and there's organizations that I'm also connected with. The Justice Ambassadors, they're through Columbia as well, where they literally get youth in the community. They go on the ground and they work with them for 16 weeks to help build policies, and the youth develop the policies with city officials. And it's sometimes really intense moments where we're going back and forth, but the youth are the advocates and they are on the ground doing the work, right? So I think when you want to do this work, or if you have an idea, I'm always a thought partner. I'll drop my email as well. But like, it starts with an idea, and that's how everything great has started. So reaching out to friends, reaching out to families, sometimes talking to someone on the bus or the train or in the store, like, hey, do you see that issue over there, that mold? I think we should do something about it, and really organizing, because the government, yes, they're supposed to take care of us, but we know how white supremacy shows up. It's not the color of the skin, it's a bigger beast. And these systems are working how they're supposed to work innately. These systems are oppressing the people that they're supposed to oppress. And yes, we're fighting for a change, but we also need community taking care of community. And that has been, like, if we go back to the Atlantic slave trade, if it weren't greats like Harriet Tubman that took care of her people, she was oppressed, but I'm not free until everyone's free, right? And that's how she showed up for community. So if you have an idea, the people in your community are your best thought partners, because they experience this in a way that we don't. And the greatest change comes from within. And then you can reach out to local CBOs. Hey, I have this idea. One, no, yes, you may receive that, but there's someone that will have buy-in to your ideas. Yeah, that's all. I'm sorry for that rant.
It's good. I'm going to add to that too, because, I was thinking as you're talking, I'm like, like anybody, can step up into these roles, to your question, Lawrence, but there are people like Unique and Lawrence that are organizing and leading from the front, but it doesn't mean that that's the only place in the movement for you, right? And so there's people that participate in all different ways, whether it's just sometimes when there's a march, and I just say, I'm going to be out there and just be a body. I'm going to be a person that's out there that gets counted as part of the masses that's helping move this forward. I think about, I was helping my partner move recently, and I was thinking about how, like, there's some people that can lift like the heavy things, like the couches and the tables, and not everybody could do that, but everybody could do something, right? Everybody can grab a lamp or something like that. As long as we're moving from here to there, many hands make light work, and the more people get involved, the faster we're going to get there. And whenever, I don't know if you helped anybody move before, you know how it is, like you move and then afterwards you hang out and you pop some, have some drinks and you eat some pizza and stuff like that. But what you can't be doing is having the drinks and the pizza while everybody else is moving, right? Like you gotta wait for the drinks. You gotta be part of what we're doing here, and then, celebrate along with us. And so I think for me, the key is, like, just pick up something, get involved somehow. And people like Unique and Jordan are like creating spaces where other people can find ways to get involved. And then when you're ready, take on that leadership role just like they have.
Awesome. Jordan, I don't know if you wanted to add anything. I feel like I saw you go off mute, but I just wanted to give a 8-minute warning for any of our attendees who want to ask questions or leave comments. We just have 8 minutes left. But in the meantime, I'll kind of have our final question. And we kind of talked about this briefly, but just want to also want to discuss if there are any resources that you all can share that for people who are interested in really organizing their interests and executing on these movements. What are some resources that they can kind of look up, whether it's online or just organizations that they can either volunteer in or just donate, participate, or even just get inspiration to start something on their own?
Yes, I can go first. First, I would say there's a ton of mutual aid groups out there right now. They were recently formed, so you should look in like the local community. I know Drive Change has a mutual aid group for their youth, for their young people. And again, so Drive Change is the organization that hires formerly incarcerated young people and provides free training to work in the restaurant industry. And so they have a mutual aid fund for their young people right now that are in their community. I know New Leadership, which is another criminal justice organization, has a mutual aid fund. I know that in, I believe Brownsville, there's some organization that's doing one. So throughout the city, throughout other cities, there's all these mutual aid funds coming together, collecting dollars to then be leveraged to help the most needy in the community. So that's one place I can start. Two, if you're in Harlem in particular, there's the Harlem Protect Your Block movement that for the next 3 Saturdays, we have programming going on in 3 different streets. And I can send that information out to folks. But it's going to be, programming provided by, the Divine Nine, provided by churches, provided by other local community-based organizations, from Double Dutch to basketball skills and drills, to passing out PPE, and giving out information that's relevant to staying healthy. So to do the dual purpose of ensuring our young people have things to do this summer and things to do on a Saturday, but also to ensure that folks have access to the right information. So I can. Oh, and then one other thing, we can always spend our money consciously, right? So right now, Black-owned businesses, brown-owned businesses are really, really hurting, right? A lot of them weren't eligible for the PPP from the feds, or they weren't able to receive that money. And so they've had to pay rent without a steady stream of income. And I think it behooves all of us to invest our money in organizations that are from the community, that are owned by people of color. And so in your everyday life, just think through how you're spending your money so we can ensure that these businesses remain here. In the last financial crisis, which was much less dire than this one, we saw a 30% decline in the number of Black-owned businesses in New York City. So that's from 2007 to 2012. So we're going to possibly see something even greater than that. And it's up to us whether we're going to actually fund those businesses to make sure they stay.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan, for sharing that. If there are any other final remarks from our speakers, Raul, Unique, if there were any other final remarks you wanted to give before we conclude the session.
I guess I'll go. So, to the question you said, I know there's a bunch of organizations that are on Google. If you have if you're passionate or you want to organize something, you could type it in Google and you'll see a lot of organizations come up that are in alignment. I offer you to read the mission statement, the vision statement of these organizations. I can name some, but everyone's values are different. So like researching them online, sometimes it's, I would say, drafting a letter, drafting an email about what you're trying to do. The email can be as basic or as thorough as you want to, and send it on to everybody on the website, right? As you find organizations that are in alignment with what you want to do. Sometimes they'll point you in a different direction. Sometimes they'll offer you help. Sometimes they'll ask for more details. Sometimes they won't. And the emails are often on the website pages. I often think that your best thought partners are organizations, but also pulling resources from within the community. So local stores, local businesses, your neighbor that you speak to, the lady you see walk to the store every day that your spirit may incline you to speak to her, your friends, your Facebook friends, your Instagram friends, your Twitter friends. In the day of social media, we have access to a bunch of different resources. And a lot of times you'll find by a Google search, you'll find organizations that are in alignment with what you want to do. So my final remarks is that no matter where you are in life or where you're going in life, if you see a social justice issue that you want to organize around, it starts with you. Even if you see it being done and you want to reenact it in your community and in another community, that's also okay, right? Because no idea is new. Everyone is recycled and reused to some capacity. So knowing that that is reality, like you can reuse an idea, right, and make it unique to you and specific to the cause that you want to do. So you're big enough, you're good enough, you're your best tool to liberation, and the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And my offering to this panel is that My email will be provided, my name, my number. And if you ever need a thought partner as you organize, I'm always available. And if I'm not, then I can point you into the direction of someone who can provide you with resources, or I can provide you with that information. And also the platform that we're here, the Black Independence Project, emailing the founders, hey, I have an idea. How can you all support me, or can you point me in the right direction? Like, every opportunity is an opportunity. And I just would like to offer that as my final words.
Man, that's dope. Yeah, I'll just say that, take power in whatever way you can, and there's many different ways to take power. One of those ways is by getting involved in your local government. It's actually a lot easier now that so many of these meetings that you had to be in person for are now being, like, you're able to watch them through Zoom and even participate through Zoom. But wherever you are, there are boards, committees, and commissions that members of that community can join, get involved in, and use power to change policy. And so I'd encourage you to follow up, look what's going on in your own local community. I hear a lot about the stuff that like Jordan was talking about earlier too. Like, you can get involved at the local level and also at the governmental level too. So do that. And then, the last thing I'll say is that, the stakes is high, and there's much work to be done. So I hope that you'll get involved some way, somehow, like Unique was just saying, the power's within you. So thanks, y'all.
Yep. Thank you, Raul and Unique and Jordan for sharing all of that, and wanted to also call out, as Unique had mentioned, that is the mission of Black Independence Project, is to really kind of uplift and provide resources to organizations that already exist across the U.S. that are putting in this work to advance Black life. So if you go on our website, blackindependenceproject.org, we have a directory of resources, but they're listed by area of focus, whether it's policy reform, whether it's food justice, reproductive justice. They're organized in those categories, and then we have them listed out by the different regions in which you may reside. So if there's an organization that resonates with you and that you want to participate in, you can reach out to our team at founders at blackindependenceproject.com, or you can reach out to the local organization directly. But we will be acting as sort of a channel organization that provides funding, resources, educational support, financial support to these local grassroots organizations on the ground that are already putting in that work. So that way, for anyone who is viewing our webinar right now, that's one way that you could also participate, is to really kind of partner with these organizations that exist. But I wanted to thank every one of our panelists for joining. Raul, Jordan, Unique, thank you again for all of your contributions. Thank you to our viewers who are watching. And yep, just follow us on social media at BLKIND Project across Instagram and Twitter, and definitely tune in into the next sessions. The next one will be at 11:15 a.m. and the last set will be at 2:35 p.m. So thank you everyone for joining, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.